Alright, morning, my name is Krim, and I'm back with the first actual series on this channel. This series is effectively a successor to How Good is X Weapon Actually, and it's going to allow me to talk about the design of a lot of different things in video games in a more concise format. Today for this episode though, we're going to talk about one of Splatoon 2's most misunderstood specials, Splashdown. Before I get into the details of this video though, I want to go over Splashdown and specifications. So, Splashdown is a special in Splatoon 2. When using it, the player rises up and then strikes the ground, which causes an explosion around them. Splashdown can be jumped in with when you choose to super into a teammate or a beacon. Splashdown has 3 hitboxes, with the furthest one away doing 55 damage, the second closest one doing 70 damage, and the direct hit of Splashdown doing 180 damage. If you happen to die before you hit the ground though, you'll only about lose 25% of your special gauge, which is a mechanic unique to Splashdown. Now that I've introduced y'all to the basics of what Splashdown is, I wanted to go in detail about the good parts of Splashdown's design before patch 3.0 and after patch 3.0. So we're going to start with before that patch. So before patch 3.0, the best part of Splashdown's design was that it was a fast panic button that people had a hard time reacting to. Since before the patch, damage dealt to a player mid-Splashdown was dependent on the quality of their internet connection. This meant that Splashdown was even harder to cancel than it is right now. Splashdown would also receive several generous changes in patch 1.3.0, getting 10 frame shield at the time and keeps the player in the peak of the Splashdown, increasing Splashdown's peak height, increasing the damage of the furthest hitbox from 40 to 55, and increasing the points per special on several Splashdown weapons. This gave a lot of weapons at the time a fast panic button that painted around them well, and it did half of the opponent's health with the 12th hitbox, and it was hard to cancel. Though after patch 3.0, Splashdown would become a lot easier to consistently cancel, and it lost its purpose as a panic button, but this isn't necessarily all bad news for Splashdown though, as in the time since patch 3.0, Splashdown would receive several changes that would mark its design shift and still make it good as well. This would include getting better paint when it lands at patch 3.2, getting an increased reduction of its special gauge when the user dies by Splashdown, and increased damage to bubbles in patch 4.1. These changes might not sound huge by themselves, but more painting when landing means the space Splashdown makes is more clear and gives the player more paint to work with, and more damage to bubbles means that Splashdown could now act as a counter to bubbles, since a landed Splashdown would completely shred them. In patches after 4.1, Splashdown would get its damage increased against Brellas, Ballers, and Booyah Bombs. On top of already getting rid of any bombs in its radius, Splashdown would receive an extended upwards hitbox, meaning that it could deal with inkjets from a safer distance rather than needing to run up right under them, making Splashdown a really good damaging relevant objects and specials, completely shredding Booyah, Bubbles, and Baller, on top of countering bomb rushes by getting rid of the bombs they throw. While both versions of Splashdown had good parts of their design, they still also had bad parts, so I'm briefly going to talk about what was bad before the patch and after the patch. Before patch, Splashdown was hard to cancel, which made it really easy to use as a panic button. A lot of people were trying to figure out the timing to cancel it, many others would adjust as fast and would still get hit by panic button Splashdowns. Thinking about what patch 2.0 did to the special, it seems like the devs weren't fond of it being used as a panic button either. While in my opinion, post-patch 3.0 Splashdown is a lot more whole, I still have issues with it. My main issue is being that its use as a defensive special isn't really that clear to see firsthand. For people newer to the game or who haven't played the game in a long time, they might not even know that this design shift happened or aren't aware that Splashdown is meant to be used more as a counter to other specials rather than being popped as a panic button. So I really wish Splashdown's design shift was made apparent, that the devs went out of their way to change its description and specify that it's meant to be used in this new way, rather than being used the way it was before the patch. I've been mentioning this design shift a lot, and I finally want to get into the meat and potatoes of it. What does this design shift mean? As I said in both the good parts and bad parts of Splashdown's design, after patch 3.0, the devs started to take the special in a different direction, one that's more focused on doing more damage to objects like Brella shields and bombs, while also dealing a lot of damage to Bubbles, Baller, Booyah, to the point where it can entirely pop Ballers, shred Bubbles, break Booyah armor, and ink armor. These traits means that Splashdown became Splatoon's first real anti-special and anti-object tool. Instead of being a panic button like its pre-patch version, it became the counter to objects in several specials. Why does Splashdown being an anti-special matter though? Because in Splatoon 2, especially in its current state, relies on a lot of special spam, and Splashdown is meant to counter a lot of common entry tools. People commonly use Ballers, Bubbles, Booyah, and Bomb Rushes to bring it back into the map, and Splashdown effectively deals with all 3. Compared to the pre-patch panic button that didn't have any of this utility and was honestly rather shallow, I feel that this is a direct upgrade for Splashdown as a special, and I'm really excited that it becoming the first anti-object / anti-special defensive option paved the road for specials like Ink Vac in Splatoon 3, which takes Splashdown's defensive utility in a different direction. While I do think Splashdown's design shift was mostly positive, I do want to touch on a few negatives before I move back to the positive side. So my really first con and problem with this design shift is that its use as an anti-special isn't really intuitive or easy to see, because the devs didn't really take time to highlight Splashdown's design shift and really show the player base what it's meant to do now, and its description stayed the same, and a lot of people also weren't there for that design shift or weren't reading the patch notes to see where Splashdown was heading. So a lot of people really aren't aware of this design shift or really don't understand it on a level to be used properly, and that's an issue. So I really would have liked if the devs could have highlighted it better. I also think that a lot of people are going to dislike that you have to really learn how to properly use Splashdown, and it requires a lot of time and observation. You really need to be aware of the places where teams like to push on maps whenever they're at a disadvantage or trying to break into the map, so you can use your Splashdown in the right time and place. and that's a learning curve and something that takes time. You can't just like pop a Splashdown and instantly it gets value. You need to learn where to use it. Moving back to positives though, I think the Splashdown shifting from a panic button to an anti-object special option means that a lot of common methods of entry now have a counter, and you should need to place your Splashdown well in order to pop it, which is really neat. I also think that several weapons can now take advantage of Splashdown's utility to have a lot more options and find their place in team comps. I'm mainly looking at Vanilla Undercover, Vanilla Splattershot, Blaster, and 96 Deco. And this also gives some already strong weapons really nice added defensive utility and more options, and K-Machine is the best example of this in the game right now. Since with Object Shredder Fizzy, it can deal more damage to Brella Shields, Baller, and Bubbles. On top of shredding Splash Wall with one Fizzy with Object Shredder, it reliably breaks armor with both Fizzy, Splashdown, and its main weapon, and it still has Splashdown to cover bomb rushes. I would honestly go as far to say that K-Machine might be the best anti-object, anti-special weapon in the game, and the fact that it's not being currently played in a shooter object spam meta with special spam is criminal. So to wrap up this first episode of Design Bytes, Splashdown is the first ever anti-object, anti-special in Splatoon, and that's really huge, because most specials at this point in Splatoon's life have always been turned into being more aggro-focused tools, and while some specials would have defensive options for be used to counter other specials, it wasn't their entire design. But for Splashdown after patch 3.0, it became that special, and I'm honestly really glad that it did. With Splashdown being what it is in the game right now, I don't think we would have Ink back in Splatoon 3. Splashdown might be misunderstood for most of its life, but I hope with the help of this video, you'll start to understand even just a little bit of its value. As for the next episode of Design Bytes though, we're going to talk about a certain big huge character in Smash Bros. How exactly he isn't understood all too well. I'll see y'all next time, and if you like what you saw, consider leaving a comment, liking, and subscribing. Thank y'all so much for the support and love. Later.